Okay, good morning. So today we are doing Mem Amud Beis, but we are up to we are up to the um, wide lines on Mem Amud Aleph. Mem Amud Aleph are up to the wide lines. Yesterday we discussed a whole series of things. Where we left off was in the intermediate wide lines by the two dots where it says Rabbi Yehuda Emer Bar Midei Deshain. If you remember, the Mishnah told us that according to Rabbi Yehuda, you make a bracha specifically on the Yerakos. You don't just say Bar Pri Adama. According to Rabbi Yehuda, we said in the Mishnah back in the beginning of Ketam Avarchim, the Mishnah told us that according to Rabbi Yehuda, al Yerakos Emer Bar Pri Adam, Rabbi Yehuda Emer Bar Midei Desham. Specific bracha. The Gemara says Amar Rav Zera, Mitamar Rav Chinana Bar Papa. Ein halach Rabbi Yehuda. The halach is not like Rabbi Yehuda. Amar Rav Zera, Mitamar Rav Chinana Bar Papa. My time is Rabbi Yehuda. What is the reason of Rabbi Yehuda that he requires the specific bracha bar minei d'shaim? It's not sufficient to say bar pratama. Amakra baruch Hashem yom yom. The words that we say in Tehillim that blesses Hashem every day. So what does it mean? Bless Hashem every day, day. Like what does it mean when you say Baruch Hashem Yom? Blesses Hashem every single day, and not at night. Like what is the pasuk trying to teach us? Every single day you should bless Hashem in a manner that would be similar to what that day is. So if that day is a yontif, as Rashi says, B'Shabbos me'ein Shabbos, b'Yontif me'ein Yontif. You should do the way of that day. So hachanami kol minu min tein le me'ein berchaisav. You should try to do similar to whatever that bracha is. If you look at Rashi back in the on Lamed Hey, Rashi Barmi de Sham, Rashi said Lefi sheish b'chal pri adam d'sham, which I'm going to kiddush Rabbi Yehuda by heker bracha l'chol minu min. He wants a heker bracha. He wants as specific as you can get. Obviously, you're not saying Baruch Hashem on a tomato, like for a tomato, and for an onion for an onion. Like, okay, there's a limit, but as much specificity as you can get, that is ideal. And how do we know that? Because the pasuk tells us Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, blessed Hashem on a daily basis, that you should give him the daily blessings that are most attuned and most akin to that day. And so too, when you're eating, you should give the blessings that are most attuned or akin to that thing that you are eating. Fine. So once we already are quoting from Rav Chinna Bar Papa or Rav Zer, we're not 100% sure who these are coming from, then we want to give you another one, and we're concluding this mission with a bit of an agatav art, and it's a classic. That the midas of HaKadosh Baruch is not like the midah of a person. If you remember, we've already had this kind of idea of Bayer Eish Kiminas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Minas Masav Adam. We already had that before in Brachot. The Gemara told us that Hashem is very different than humans in the sense that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Tsar, a Tzayer, right? Hashem is not like a regular artist. A regular artist, when they do art, it's just 2D, right? But they can't create form within form. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is different. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is able to create a form within a form in the sense that a human being is able to be born, and a human being cannot do that. We also said that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is also. We also said another time that the Bayer Eish like Midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Midas Vasav Adam. That normally when a person who's a seller, when he sells something, he's very sad. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not like that. Why? The Gemara said Hashem gave us the Torah. He's happy, right? So it's here's another example of Bayer Eish like Midas HaKadosh Baruch Hu Midas Vasav Adam. In what sense here? That normally when you have human beings when they were making something, so the clay reikon is machzik. When they have something empty, have an empty jar, then you can fill it up with something. But a mole ain't a machzik. When it's already full, you can't do anything with it. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu ain't a can. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not like that. Mole machzik, right? The ones that are full, they're able to be taking on more. Reikon ain't a machzik, but those who are empty cannot be machzik anything, right? In the sense of, if you look at Rashi over here, was there a Rashi over here? No, but then I saw it somewhere else. Oh, yeah, it's Rashi in Sukkah. Rashi says, what does it mean that the Klei Reichan the person is machzik, who has room in it, is a person who is not a person who is empty person, a person who is a sinner. So there's no ability for them to take in. However, somebody who's a chacham, somebody who's ragil is shmaya. So if you look at Rashi there in Sukkah Memvav, so Rashi says that the clay reikon is machzik, mashanes l'sechem mali ain't a machzik. What clay mali is not going to take in anything new. But the vice versa, when it comes to the Torah, when it comes to Kedusha, somebody who's full is able to always take on more. In Horgalis l'shmaya az tishma. Right? If a person has already heard, he'll hear more. Tucha lilmad lohais, if you can always take on extra. V'im lav lois tishma, if a person is not listening, then it will not be able to listen to anything. And how do we know this? What's the source? The Gemara tells us a pasuk. Shenema v'yemim shemar tishma l'kel Hashem l'kecha rev v'yosher ben avtasav azantel mitzvos v'shemarti kol chukav. So what does it mean? Im shemaya tishma. If you heard, you will hear. Right? Im shemaya. The simple reading of the pasuk is not that. Right? Im shemaya tishma means if you will listen, but what we're translating it as v'yemim shemaya tishma. If you already heard, so then tishma you will continue to listen. Shemaya tishma v'im lav lo tishma davar acher. Im shemaya b'yoshan. Tishma Mechadish. If you already heard in the past, you will hear again in the new stuff. If you heard the old stuff, you will hear the new stuff. But if you already turned away your heart, you're not going to hear anything. So this is the same idea, I think, of it in the same way as it comes to other cliches or adages, right? You need something to be taken care of. Find a busy person and ask them to take care of it, right? They'll manage to take care of it more than somebody who's not a busy person. That's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. Okay, so now we're at the Mishnah. And we are going to now do this new Mishnah here. The Mishnah tells us, Berach al pera se'ilan bar pira adama yatsa. If somebody makes a bracha on fruit, right? He makes a bracha on fruit, hadama. The halacha says the Mishnah is yatsa. Val pera haaretz, but if he makes a bracha on fruit from the ground, bar pira eitz, if he makes on that fruit from the ground, which he should be making a hadama, instead he made a ha'etz, lo yatsa. That is not Yatzav. Al Kulam and Mama Shakal Nebizvara Yatzav. On everything, if he says Shakal, then he's Yatzav. Says the Gemara, Mantana, the Iker Elon Arahi. Who is the man, the Amar, that holds that the main part of the tree is the earth? Right? Why are we asking that? Because what did the Mishnah open up with? The Mishnah opens up with new Mishnah. Yeah, Berach al Peres Elon Bar Piradama Yatza. If somebody is making a bracha on the Peres Elon, he's making a bracha on a fruit tree, he's making Adama. Now, the Mishnah said he's Yatza. So the Gemara is saying, what's the reason that you're going to be Yatza if you made a bracha on a fruit tree Adama? Right? You made a bracha on the fruit from a tree Adama. Why? Because it must be that the Tana holds that the Iker Elon is Ara. The Iker aspect of the tree is coming from the fact that it's getting its sustenance from the earth. Says Rashi, the Iker Elon Arahi, the Iker part of the tree is of the sustenance that it receives from the ground. The Iker Kol HaPeres Hi Haaretz. V'Akol Gadol Haimena. The Iker part of the fruits of the tree are what it's getting from the ground. It's all growing from it, right? The roots from the ground bring it in water, bring in all things. Obviously, the sunlight and other things give the tree stuff, but fundamentally, it's getting in a lot from the ground. So therefore, since it's getting in a lot from the ground, if you made a hadama on the fruit tree, you will be yotze. So the what do you call the Gemara says Amar Nachman Yitzchak Rabbi Yehuda. The man the Amar who holds this is Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanan. How do we know that it's Rabbi Yehuda who holds this? The Tanan, because we have a Mishnah, and the Mishnah tells us Yavesh Hamayan, Hamayan. So I just want to point out that the Mishnah doesn't mention anything about Rabbi Yehuda, right? There's no Rabbi Yehuda in the Mishnah. So Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak is telling us that this is the position of Rabbi Yehuda, that the Iker part of the tree is the fact that it's growing from the ground. And therefore the Bar Piadama would be sufficient. Which would be interesting because this is the same Rabbi Yehuda, presumably, who holds that you have to be very, very specific. Who says Baruch Hashem Yom Yom, you have to always be very specified. So therefore, you have to say Baruch B'nei Desham on fruits from the ground. It's not simple enough to say Baruch Piadama. So leave that on the side for the moment. But the Gemara is telling us that who's man the Amr holds the Iker Elon is from the ground. Rabbi Nachman says Rabbi Yehuda the Tanami of Mishnah Bikurim Yavesh HaMa'ayan. Right, a Ma'ayan is an underground spring. So if the spring dies, v'niktat se'ilan, or the tree is cut down, So maybe the ain't kaire. The halacha is your maybe you bring the bikurim to the Beis Hamikdash, but you're not able to be carry. You can't say the whole speech that you're supposed to give when you bring bikurim. Why can't you give the whole speech? You can't give the speech because of the fact that you're not able to say the words that are associated with it. Right? One of the words that are associated with it. So if you look there in the beginning of Parshas Kislev, the pasuk tells us that when you would come there you would bring your fruit, you put it in the tent, and you come to the Kohen, you come to Beis Hamikdash, and then you give a speech. We say part of this right in the Haggadah, and and then you made your whole speech. So the person, the way he concludes the speech is Va'ata. I'm bringing you the first of my fruits. Hashem gave you, and then you leave it there before Hashem, and you bow down, etc. So what do you say in your end of your speech? And now, I'm bringing the first of my fruits of the ground. What is Bikurim brought on? It's only brought on fruits of the tree. And yet we're calling it what? Pri Adama. And you say, Asher nosat li Hashem, that Hashem gave to me. So a woman is chayiv in Bikurim also, right? But she doesn't able to say that she's not able to be karet. Right? Why is a woman not able to be karet? Because she can't say, Ha'adam Asher nosat li Hashem, the land that Hashem gave to me, because the women were not zeche in Yush Sa'aretz. It was the men that were. So since she can't say that, she can't say the speech. What about this guy? This guy who's bringing bikurim from a field that the ma'ayan dried out, or the fruit trees now were cut down. What's the halacha? So Rashi explains to us over here that according to this mission there in bikurim, according to the Tanakhama, he's maybe the he's able to bring the bikurim, but he can't say the speech. Why can't he say the speech? Says Rashi. Why is maybe the says Rashi? He can't say from the ground that you gave me. The cave in the Yavesh Ma'ayan, because of the fact that the Ma'ayan was cut down, because of the fact that the Ma'ayan is now gone, or right, or the fruit tree is cut off, so batal la'ara. So the land is as though it's been batal. The land is as though it's gone. So therefore, the bracha doesn't apply. The speech that you're going to give doesn't apply. It's like you don't have the land. So therefore, you may be v'enikari. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you may be v'kari. You're able to say the whole speech because, according to Rabbi Yehuda, as Rashi explains, she'aretz ikar. The land is the ikar. And what happens if the land is the ikar? Even if the mayan is gone, even if the tree is cut down, the land is still there. So the land is still there. You're still able to say you can still say the land that Hashem has given to me. Good. So then it comes out. The Gemara's question is, who is the man the Amar who holds that the ikar part of the Elon is the ground? Who is that? Says Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak. It has to be with Rabbi Yehuda. Why does it have to be with Rabbi Yehuda? Because of the fact that you see, Rabbi Yehuda says that you're still maybe v'karei. You're still able to say Adam Hashem Asatali Hashem. So therefore, even if you haven't got a tree, the tree is gone, the mayan is destroyed, whatever, you can still make the bracha. So according to that, then it comes out that Rabbi Yehuda is the man the Amar who will say that when you make a bracha of Adama on the paris of a fruit tree, it's still no problem. Why is it no problem? Because the ikar part of the Elon is the ground, and therefore even Bar Adama will be applicable to it. Good. Now we don't have a lot of time, but we can't not do this. So you're just a little bit. There's a steer in the Rambam, or at least that's what everyone seems to think is a steer in the Rambam. This is a massive issue. We won't have time to do it now, but we're just going to touch on it a little bit, okay? So if you look at the Rambam in Hilchas Brachos, Perek Ches Halacha Yud, the Rambam tells us that Derech al Peres Ilan Bar Pri Adama Yatza. If somebody makes a bracha Bar Pri Adama on a fruit from a tree, he's Yaitza. Why would he say that he would be Yaitza? If somebody's making a Bar Pri Adama on the fruit of a tree, why is he Yaitza? Because he holds like presumably Rabbi Yehuda. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda is telling us that what's the ikar part of a fruit tree is the ground. So therefore, if you make a hadama, it's okay. Good. Now listen to this. Says the Rambam, Hifresh Bikura v'Yovesh Ma'ayan. What's this? This is in Hilchos Bikurim, right? In Hilchos Bikurim, the Rambam tells us what happens if somebody takes off the Bikurim, and guess what? The Ma'ayan is dried out, or Shenik's Se'ilan, or the tree is cut off. There's a difference between the Shama and the Bavli in terms of the order of what happens. I'm not getting into that now. Let's just assume that there's no more Ma'ayan, there's no more tree, and therefore the question is, what do you do? Do you just bring the Bikurim and not give a speech, or do you give the speech? Was around passing like Hifish Bikur v'Yavish Mayana Shenikta Seilan. Maybe ve'ena kairei. He brings the Bikurim and he doesn't speak. Who's that like? Tanakama, not like Rabbi Yehuda. So how could it be that the Rambam is passing in his brachas that you make a bracha pradam on fruit and you yet to be there, but it's not a problem, which is the position of the Mishnah, the position of the Tanakama, which you would assume is the Iker halacha, and then passing like Rabbi Yehuda that says that you're maybe, and which the Gemara is telling you is the passing like Rabbi Yehuda, and then at the same time say maybe v'enikar, which is not like Rabbi Yehuda, which is like a Tanakama. You hear the question? Does he pass like Rabbi Yehuda? Does he not pass like Rabbi Yehuda? And Hilchos Bikurim, it sounds like he doesn't pass like Rabbi Yehuda. And Hilchos Brachot, it sounds like he does pass like Rabbi Yehuda. The Gemara is telling the two together. The Gemara says that you want to know how you can make a bar pradama on fruit. It's only because of the fact that you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you're maybe v'kairei, and the Ram holds maybe v'einei kairei, and he holds that you can still make a bar pradama on fruit. The b'diavad. How can that go? You hear the stira? Yeah, strong question. Okay, that's the question that everybody asks. So one way to answer the question, the partial way to answer the question, is to say that there's different girses. If you look in the Shina and the the Franco Rambam, they give you all the different girses that came up. Many people said it's a different girsa. The Berach al Peres, the Ilam Ber Pradama, the Rambam really wrote Lo Yatza. The Rambam didn't say Yatza, he really said Lo Yatza. I kid you not. If you look at the Mari Korkis and Hilchos Bikurim, Mari Korkis goes on and on. It says that there are a lot of old girses, and they all say Lo Yatza. There's the only new girses that have Yatza. The Kesef Mishnah, the Mechaber deals with that also. He also brings in down the ideas about the different girses. It's a major point. Now, many times girses change. I literally was giving over a chabur to my son last night on this topic about manuscripts. We talked about Gemara. He's learning Shabbos, so he wanted a chabur on Shabbos about some topic. So I decided to give him a topic on archaeology and halacha. So we discussed the idea about manuscripts, whether or not you can use manuscripts, which manuscripts you can use. So we talked about there's a Gemara in Shabbos Samagimel Beis about Rabbi Yossi, what he saw in Rome in terms of the tzitz. Was it on one line or two lines? He said he saw it on one line. The Ram Paskas and Echos Beis Abachir that you could write it on one line, but that's only b'diavad. Really, try it on two lines. I saw it in Rome. Don't you have to use it? So you don't have to use always the manuscripts. You don't always have to use the archaeology. It doesn't always work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So we try and explain when yes and when no. So if you look there in Shabbos Kuf Tezayin, so you see there that the Tais goes after the Rabbeinu Tam goes after the Rashbam, because in terms of the brachas that we do at a bris, does the father give the bracha first, or does the male give the bracha first? So we know how we do it nowadays. There's the male gives the bracha first, and then you would take the bracha, and then we say the audience Kishem Shenechnas the bris. So all of that is a whole debate between the Rashbam and the Rabbeinu Tam. And the Rashbam seems to suggest that in fact what you do is the girsa is that the father goes first. And the Rabbeinu Tam says, no, I checked on all the Svarim, and you're wrong. You're incorrect. And this is a major battle between the Rashbam and the Rabbeinu Tam. Look at the beginning of Sefer HaYashar. You'll see that the Rabbeinu Tam says, I'm writing Sefer HaYashar because I'm very angry at the people that changed all the girsas. Meaning, my brother, the Rashbam, he changes the girsas. He says, right, grandfather Rashi. Right, my grandfather Rashi, he didn't, right? What did he do? If he had a different girsa, he would put it in his commentaries. Remember, we just had now in Brachos, we just had a few times. Rashi said 3 times already in Ketzim Mavarchin. Then when it says Vehilchasa, Rashi says Veles, right? Ve'enanu girsin, this Vehilchasa, why the Bahag, me Bahagu, me Bahalachas Gedelasu. Rashi's putting that in his thing. He's not taking it out of the Gemara. He's just telling you that even though the Gemara says Vehilchasa, we shouldn't be garsin. It happens to be, most of the examples are not in our Gemara anymore, but they were in his. But says the Rabbeinu Tam, but to change the actual Gemara because you don't like the girsa, that we can't. Look at the back, look at the Gemara. When they change the girsas, they're not changing anything Gemara. They put an aleph or a base or something, and you say on the side, look, it's not on the girsa, or changed it something around. So Rabbeinu Tam says that's why he's writing the Sefer HaYashar. And now getting back to the point about girsas and the like. So this is a fundamental answer. That there could be those different gears. Fine, that's one possibility. Second possibility, the Shagas Aryeh writes that he tries to give an answer Simchav Gimel to this question. Shagas Aryeh tries his answer. His basic approach is this: says the Shagas Aryeh that the steer of the Rambam, you can answer the Rambam. The vort isn't a question of the fact that the Rambam's not passing like Rabbi Yehuda in the sense that we thought. We thought that somebody was bringing bikurim and the mayan has now dried out, or the tree is things. That maybe the Rambam says he's maybe ve'ene kairei. We said, how could it be? Doesn't he pass like Rabbi Yehuda? And Rabbi Yehuda says maybe v'kairei. So the answer, says the Shagasari suggests, is that we have to look in Taisvis. So Taisvis says to us a bit of a different reason than Rashi. What did Rashi say? Rashi says, what's the reason why you're not able to make the speech? Because of the fact that you can't say, Adam Hashem Satali. Why? Because the ground is gone. You've destroyed it. That's what the Tanakhama feels. And Buddha says, no, maybe Vikare. What does Rashi say? Sha'aretzia Ikar. The land is always there. There's no changes that you could still say. Says Taisvis, Yavesh HaMayan. Says Taisvis, what does it mean Yavesh HaMayan? What's the problem with that? So Yesh Mefashim Lekach Mevi Ve'ene Karim Nesh Ene Nira K'Mishabeach LaKadosh Baruch Hu Ela K'Kovel Amasha Nasan LeAdam She'ena Ru'i LePeris. It's like you're cursing Hashem when you're saying this. You gave me this land, right? If you're going to be kairei, say thank you for giving me this great land. This land's bad. The springs have died. The tree is dead. So it seems like you're complaining. So the Rambam is saying that in Hilchos Brachos, if somebody takes a fruit and he makes a hadama, so the evidence got to be yaitzer. Why is he got to be yaitzer? Because we pass like Rabbi Yehuda. Because the main aspect of the tree is the ground, and in fact, you're able to be yaitzer the bar pradam on a fruit. What about when it came to the bikurim? Why does it say meive and a kurb? Who holds meive and kurb? It's not a vort that he's holding not like Rabbi Yehuda. He can agree with Rabbi Yehuda in the sense that the ikar part of the tree is the ground. But the reason that you're not being kairei is not because of the issue of is the ground the ikar or not the ikar. The reason that you're not being kairei is because of the fact that it seems like you're being kaivel on HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It seems like you're complaining to the Rebbeinu Shalom. You're saying, oh, Hashem, thank you for giving me this land. It might be seen as a sarcastic kind of a thing. Like, thank you for this amazing land that you gave me. But your land is degraded. It has no mayan. It has no tree. So it seems like you're complaining. That is potentially the answer. The Shagas Aryeh wants to suggest that maybe the Rambam really holds like Taisvis. Yes? Frek the Maritzchi is, and I should point out, the Shagas Aryeh doesn't point out, but I should point out to you that very interesting. If you looked in the Pirush HaMishnah of the Rambam and Bikurim, the Pirush HaMishnah of the Rambam and Bikurim says like this: what's the reason that he says you're maybe ve'ene kairei? What's the reason he says that you're maybe ve'ene kairei? Says the Rambam, according to the Tanakhama, says the Rambam, it's because of the fact that you could only be kairei b'shas simcha. And since you're obviously not happy, for example, he says you could only be kairei between Shavuos and Sukkot during the harvest season. If you are coming Chanukah time, right? You want to be Bikurim and Chanukah, you can't be kairei, says the Rambam. Why? The lush of the Rambam is the Kari Mechag Ma'atzeres V'Arachag Mevi V'Kari Mechag V'Chanukah Mevi V'Inekar Lefisha Simchas Oisa Shana Kvar Nigmar B'Soif Chag HaSukkos. The simcha of that year for a farmer is over after Sukkot. Now you have some extra food or whatever you want to bring it. It's nice, but Mevi V'Inekar, you're not fully happy. It's the winter. It's cold, it's slippery. You're not happy enough. That's what the Rambam says. Rabbi Yehuda and what does Rabbi Yehuda say? Ein a toila hakriya b'simcha, and Rabbi Yehuda is not toila the kriya in simcha. So therefore, since he's not toila the kriya in simcha, what? Since he's not toila the kriya in simcha, so therefore you can say you could be kairei. What does it sound like from the Rambam and the Pirush HaMishnah? That the key word is on simcha. Do you have the requisite level of simcha or not? In which case, maybe there would be a smach to the Shagas Aryeh to say that He's not, and by the way, I should point out that the Gersa in the Persian Mishnah is pretty clear. It says ve'ena halacha, that he's not passing like Rabbi Yehuda, right? Which is what, the way it says over here, because he says me've and ikari, which sounds like Tanakam, not like Rabbi Yehuda. But it sounds like it's Toila and Simcha, which may be the smach for the Shagas Ayr to say that it sounds like you're being kavla on a Kadosh Baruch Hu. You're complaining. The one problem is with the Shagas Aryeh is this, and the Maris Chias points out. I didn't point it out, but it's pashut. It's obvious from the Rambam. Maris Chias asks, how can the Shagas Aryeh say this? Look at the lashon of Rambam. Hifrish bikur v'yavesh ha'mayan ha'sheniktas ha'ilon mevi v'enikare lefish zek kimisha ein loikarka, because it's like false testimony. Sharei Avda, he already lost the land. Who is that like? That's Rashi, because Rashi says, what's the reason maybe v'enikare? Because the cave in the Yavesh Hamayam Niktas Ilam Imena, but the Loyara, he doesn't have land anymore. So that's exactly like Rashi, not like Taisvis. So that's the Maritzkia's question on the Shagasai. He says, he leaves off Zarchian. So I'll answer to you, the answer I think is probably the right answer is the Rashash. So Rashash doesn't go through this, but he is, I think, giving the fundamental answer, which is like this. He says, everybody agrees that fundamentally every tree depends on the ground. There's no debate about that. The only debate is in relation to brachas. The only relation is in relation to the bracha that you're going to make, not about the fundamental. Of course, everybody agrees on that. So says the Rashash. So you have a practical question about Bikurim, fine. But the fundamental idea that the Eved, a bracha of Hadama would apply to a tree, everybody agrees with that. That's not a machlekes in Rabbi Yehuda or the Tanakama. That would be fundamental. Everybody agree with this idea. Because everybody agrees that, of course, the tree is dependent on the ground. The machlokes is coming out in a practical ways as it relates to the bikurim. So therefore, he would like to suggest, if that's the case, or I would like to suggest, on the basis of this Rashash, and that could be why the Rambam, when it comes to Hilchas Brachas, is willing to say that the halacha is you make a b'diavad adama, and that will be fine on the pair. It's not a problem. And yet in Hilchas Bikurim, he's not passing like Rabbi Yehuda. There's nothing. The two are not the same. One is the practical law of Hilchos Bikurim. He doesn't pass like Rabbi Yehuda for that. He passes like a Tanakama. Maybe any Kairei. But with regards to Hilchos Brachas, it's not a bora passing like Rabbi Yehuda to say that you're Yaitz. No, I'm passing like, because everybody agrees. Everybody agrees. Even the Tanakama agrees. Of course, the ground is the fundamental source for the nutrients of the tree and why the tree will survive. And that's why the Eved, maybe we could say for the answer for the Rambam is dependent on this Rashash. Okay, just to point out, because we didn't do this two-line Taisus here, the one right before, Rabbi Yehuda, he Tatan Yovesh Hamayan, V'ner Da'alach Rabbi Yehuda, the Sasam Lan Kavasei. So the Taisus is very relevant because Taisus says that we should pass on like Rabbi Yehuda because we're saying Man Tana to Ikir Ilan Arahu, Rabbi Nachman Yitzchak is saying it's like Rabbi Yehuda. So Rabbi Yehuda, the Gemara is leaving it off like that the Mishnah is going like Rabbi Yehuda. So Taisus says it sounds like that the Psak is in fact like Rabbi Yehuda. So that would obviously be a different approach than everything we've just said until now, which would be that we are parsing like the Tanakam, and maybe the Einakari as the fundamental, not maybe Vikari. Okay, we have to move on. Says the Gemara. Shita, the next line of the Mishnah told us that al peres haaretz, on fruits from the ground, you have to make a hadama. And if you made no eight, you're not yoytze. Says Shita, well, I don't need a chiddush to tell me this. No. There is a reason why I have to tell you that from fruits that grow from the ground, you still have to make a hadama, and then eight is not yoytze. Why not? Because I needed this actually for another opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. The Amar Chita min Ilani. Rabbi Yehuda very famously says that a chita is a type of tree. Why? The Tanya, because they have a famous brisa. Ilan she'achal and other mishim. What was the fruit that Adam ate in the Garden of Eden? We don't know. What is that fruit? The Rameir Omer Gefen Haya. She'ein la davar shemevi yilala ala adam ela yayin. Right? Rabbi Meir says that you know what it was? The first fruit in the Garden of Eden. It was the grape. Why? Because that's the thing that brings out the pain, the crying, the fetching of a human being. We see in Parashas Noach that Noach's problems began when he was drinking wine. So the same thing happened with Adam. He was drinking. He had some grapes. Right, beautifully, that in the very thing that caused him the kilkul, that caused him the problem, that was also what was enabled him to be dressed once he realized he was naked. Right, he covered himself up in fig leaves. Now this is a beautiful Rashi over here in Sukkah. It's Sanhedrin. Rashi tells us, "Minas HaKadosh Baruch Hu be'izemel," the very thing that Hashem beats you with. shehu makaboy hu marpiboy, right? The same thing that he beats you with, he also heals you with. This also relates to the Mida Kenegami. I discussed a little bit about it on Shabbos. There's definitely a simile. There's definitely a beauty in the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu deals out things, and this would be very nice according to Nehemiah that they sim with the Ta'ena, and then Ta'ena is the thing that comes and helps them to be able to move on in this world. Rabbi Yehuda says it was grain. It was wheat. A kid cannot say Abba or Ima until he has tasted some wheat. So therefore, so you see, the question of the brisa was, what was the Elon that Adam Rishon ate, and what's the response? Right, the response is either it's a grape, which by the way grows on a vine. It's not like a regular normal tree, although you could, or the way they grow the vine successfully is by putting it on, fences or whatever to enable it to actually grow. So it has like wood. Right, it has wood. It's not wood that you could use for building anything, but it has wood and it has the branches that come from it. But the chita is not wood; it's just a stalk, right? And nevertheless, he's still calling it a tree, right? And nevertheless, he's still calling it a tree. So Sakidat the Kamid Halav Rabbi Huda Chita Min Elon Hu Levarach La Bar Pirates Kamashma Hechem Levarachin Bar Pirates. So when do we say Bar Pirates? It's not like it's not. Rabbi Huda is saying this is a tree, chita, but it's not really a real tree. He's just saying it for the purposes of this, but it's not a fundamental tree. What's the actual tree? And therefore, I needed the Mishnah to tell you that it's not like Rabbi Yehuda, that according to the Mishnah, you cannot be yetzer with the bracha of eitz on pears from the ground. You need to say Adama. So then the Gemara says, so then what is the actual determinant of a tree? What determines what is a fruit tree? Is heicham of archin bar per eitz. When do you say the bar per eitz? Heicha the chishaklas the peri, where you take away the fruit. Eisel gavzav hadar mefik, that the branch still remains and it will bring again fruit for another year. Look at the Taisvis here, the bottom Taisvis. Bottom Taisvis says Eisel Gavza v'Hadar Asi, says Taisvis Mehacha near the Tutem v'Chayotze ben Tzrichen levarach alein bar per eitz. Taisvis says you should make ha'etz on strawberries. Why? Because strawberries are what? Perennials. Strawberries come back year after year. I looked it up online just to make sure that this was true. And they say about 5 years strawberries come back and then they die. So the way you manage to keep them going is that you have to play around with them in terms of pruning them, whatever. You can keep the strawberries going. But strawberries are perennials. So Tais is saying, based upon what the Gemara said over here, the chishagas the peri the gavs of adam efik, that when you take away the fruit and the what he calls still remains, the branch still remains and it's able to produce more fruits. Tais says it should be a ha'etz. But Tais concludes that it's not a eight. Tais brings that again. Rabbeinu Menachem has been very popular here on this page. So Tais brings down from the Yerushalmi, essentially, that it will end up being that you make a hadama, and that's how we pass. We turn the page now to the next page. Finally, get the memo based. But where you take the fruit, then the branch is not able to produce any more fruit the following year. All right, so that would be example like bananas, right? Banana trees, right? You make adama, right? When you cut it off, you're cutting off essentially the whole thing. And in fact, that is the way they treat the trees. They break them down. It only produces once. Okay, but on everything we said, if you say shahakol, then it's fine. Rav Huna says that's true, except for bread and wine. When it comes to pas or yayin, then if you make a shahakol, even if you make a shahakol and pas and yayin, you're still going to be yotzer. Let's say it's a machlekes tanoim that the brisa tells us ruah pas or kamana pasu baruch hamakim shabara yotza. If somebody sees bread and he says, "Wow, this bread is beautiful. Blessed is the Makkah, blessed is Hashem that created it." So he's yotza. Same thing with the fig. If somebody says Baruch Hamagim Shabra on the fig, how wonderful this fig is, he's yotza. Anybody who's mishan in any way from the matbeh of the brachas, then he's not yotza. So it says the more name Rav Huna Damak Rabbi Yossi, Rav Damak Rabbi Meir. Let's say Rav Huna is going to Rabbi Yossi that you're not able to mishan from the matbeh of the brachas. So therefore, when it comes to the shahakla, you can say it, but not on pras, not on yain. And let's say that Rabbi Yochanan is more chilled out. He says, "Oh, even shahakla works for that because you are able to say brachas on things that are not exactly like the way the Chacham did it. So long as you say how wonderful it is, you're getting the basic idea in, so that's sufficient." So Rabbi Huna says, "I could hold like Rabbi Meir." Why? The ad kind of like Rabbi Meir Hassan. When did Rabbi Meir said you're able to say Brich Rahman, a wonderful world Hashem made the figs and bread, and you're able to be Yaitza? Is Alahecha de come Midkar Shemaya the pass where you brought out the name of the bread. You said, well, how wonderful is this bread? Brich Hamakim. The bar Shabara, or you say Ta'ani, say, wow, Brich Hamakim Shabara, that this wonderful Ta'ani. But you said Kama no pasdu, or you said that how wonderful is this Ta'ani? Kama no Ta'ana zu. You said something about the Ta'ani. You brought it in. And then you said Brich Hamakim, so that's sufficient because you brought in the actual food that you're talking about. You're not talking about the bread. I feel that doesn't work. Rabbi Yochanan says I can teach you even like Rabbi Yosi. Well, I could add kind of like Rabbi Yosi. When did Rabbi Yosi not say this? When did Rabbi Yosi say that you're not to mishana from the matbeh of the brachas that the rabbis were metakein? That's in a situation where when you're making a blessing up that the rabbis didn't make up. So you're saying brich rachmana. I don't know from these things. But shakling dvar is a blessing from the rabbis. So if you look at Rabbi Yosi, that such a blessing would work. So there's no raya that Rav Huna has to go with Rabbi Yosi or Rabbi Meir go to Rabbi Yochanan. I should point out, Top Taisis v'chein halacha, that Taisis says that we pass like Rabbi Yochanan, the Rav Rabbi Yochanan, halacha is Rabbi Yochanan. The kol sheken l'gabi Rav Huna, sheyo talmidei sharav. If you remember, we literally had this exact kind of a notion in Taisis and Lam Tes. But the conclusion of Taisis, Divrei Masal Mevarach on Lam Tes and Beis, Taisis again said. Then Taisis tried to explain over there more detailed than he said over here, where he says that we only say Basroi with regards to generations of Amayra, but a Talmud of one rabbi who's quoting over his own rabbi, we're not going to say Basroi on that. Now, the idea of the next case, his name is not adding anything fundamental, so we're going to skip now. The Gemara tells us the story about Binyamin Riyah. Binyamin Riyah, so Binyamin the shepherd, what did he do? Karach Rifti, he was eating some bread. Amar Berch Mari, the high pizza. He said, blessed is the master of this bread. The Amar Rav Yaitse, Rav says he's Yaitse. Amar Rav called Brachot and Bracha Haskaras Hashem and a Bracha. But they ask, how could it say Brich Mari, the high pizza, is going to be Yaitse? How's he Yaitse? He didn't say Hashem. If you remember back on your base, we had a whole sugya. We had a Machlokes Rav and Rabbi Yochanan. If you say what is a bracha? Do you have to say Hashem or do you have to say Melech HaOlam? The Rav says it's Yaitse. How can he say it's Yaitse? He doesn't even say Hashem. He just said Brich Mari Daibita. Blessed is the master of this bread. So the Gemara says you have to answer the Amar Brich Rachmana Mari Daibita. Right? Blessed is Hashem, who's the master of this bread. So now he said Hashem. So now he'll be Yaitse. All right, we have to conclude over here. All right, stop.